Here we are, the Deal News Live segment being taped and live streamed from the fabulous Ignition Studios on the show floor of AIME Expo. It's old home week for me from a show perspective, but even further back than that, when I first broke into the glorious world of publishing, my friend Philippe also was breaking in. We spent our formative years, learned a lot of bad habits at McMullen Publishing. Philippe, how did you end up at McMullen and why did you stay there?
Wow, it's a very interesting story. But back in 1978, I was traveling the U.S. With my backpack, jumping from Greyhound to crappy rental cars. And I had been subscribing to Street Rodder magazine since 1975. And I wanted to meet the editor of the time, Pat Ganal, because I admired his writing and everything. And I just showed up at the office one day. He was on the assignment, but Tom McMullen was there. And he said, who are you? You know, does hot rods in France and stuff? I said, yeah, well, there's a few, and I'm one of those. He said, well, just wait a minute. My wife speaks French. She'd love to talk to you. And then we became friends, and in 1982, they came, 83, they came on vacation to France. We cruised around Paris in the rain in my custom yellow Simca. And this the omelette, the fluffy omelette. And they said, what are you doing here? Why don't you come and work in the U.S.? And I said, I'll come and be your pool boy and polish your 32 in the sunshine. No problem, Tom. And then we left it at that. And then at Christmas 83, he called and offered me a job to do Street Rodding Illustrated. And that's how I came to the U.S. and became, I was already a hot rod journalist in France, but became a hot rod journalist in the U.S. and had the pleasure to work with you.
So, your office was down the hall. McMullen at the time was formed in Tom's former Cougar pen. So the Cougars had these long runs after the city and the state said you can't have dangerous animals and big cats within city limits. Tom had to move the Cougars out, and he put in offices and it was descending order in importance of magazines. And Truckin' and Hot Bike and the important magazines were at the front of the Cougar Run. And then all the way at the back were magazines that weren't so popular. So VW Trends was the furthest of the fur, all the way back. Well, guess what? When those big cats pace and stuff, they always urinate in the same spot. And my office was literally built on a concrete slab full of cougar piss. And when it rained, the ammonia was so intense it peeled the wallpaper off the walls and all of that. So as you advanced in the McMullen hierarchy, you would get closer to the front. Your office, we were about midway there at the break.
I was lucky, but I had traces of cougar because some of my drawers were missing chunks, and I thought, what happened? Somebody kicked the drawer. So, oh no, the cougar chewed on the drawer. So that was something else, But yeah, Tom, wow, what a character.
And nobody would believe that. And the stories about Tom McMullen, and it was the Wild West. And same thing, Paisano was being formed, and the wild things that happened in the Paisano compound and all of that. Publishing was whatever you wanted to be, but it was a great stepping stone. We got an opportunity of a lifetime to.
We sure did, and it was truly about passion of the subject matter we covered. When I moved on later on to a much bigger corporate publishing empire, the feeling was totally different. It was all about money, and of course, a magazine costs money to publish. You have to have ad revenue, but then the content started being driven by ad revenue rather than passion and true interesting hot rod parts and stuff like that. And that's when I got out of it, because it was no longer a passion like it was at McMullen Publishing. We didn't have any money, but we could do whatever we wanted and write about the things we love and that the readers love.
And passion was also the unifying factor for Philippe and I. I don't know anything about hot rods, and I know very little about Volkswagens, but I'm the editor of a Volkswagen book. He's the editor of a hot rod book. And what would we talk about? We talk about Dakar and your crazy friend Fanui and the rallies and all of the great things that happened, and riding motorcycles. And you raced motorcycles in France. And then, so we had that common bond, even though neither one of us was doing motorcycles at the time.
That is true, and it was fun to do some testing with you and some photography when quads first came out. We went testing together because I just loved it. It was not my job, but you're my friend. It's fun, so we went and did it together. And all the Baja 1000 stuff. My friend Yann Cadore, who came having raced the Dakar, raced the Baja 1000 with just one guy. He's in a wheelchair. and driving his Mercedes across behind, finished. I mean, those were glorious days.
And that was the great thing about it, because there were so many titles there at McMullen. When you walked in the lobby, you had no idea who was going to be sitting there, and what kind of legends there were, and that was the impact. And at Hot Bike, again, I'm not a Harley guy, but when you walk in and you see the legends, Perowitz is sitting there. Well, actually, him and Bob Clark are probably doing something in the back, but
Yeah.
there was all sorts of things going on. These living legends were household fixtures, and you got that kind of exposure and the opportunity. So I didn't meet Tom on my first day on the job. I didn't meet him until the end of the first week. And it turns out the editor of the beer magazine got shipped off to the Betty Ford Clinic to dry out. And Tom came back to my office, and it's like the big boss, and I'm shaking in my boots. And he says, "You went to college, didn't you, kid?" "Yes, sir, I did." "That means you drink beer." "Yes, sir, I do." "I think I'm getting canned for being drunk on the job." It says, "Well, there's a guy in the lobby, and you got to go meet him." It's like, okay. So I go up, and it's David Ashmore from Scottish and Newcastle United Brewing, with the first case of Newcastle Brown in the United States that he's hand carried on an airplane to present to the previous editor for sampling and taste test. And it came with a cover 4 ad for the magazine. So by default, I'm now the beer expert. I'm the editor of All About Beer magazine. Oh, and I still got to do VW Trends. There's no bump in pay. There's no change in my job title. It's just more of the same. By the time I left McMullen, I was doing VW Trends, four-wheel drive action,
The
Splash,
jet ski, yeah.
the jet ski magazine. Every time there was a launch, I was doing that. The beer magazine never went away. It did go to bi-monthly, so at least I didn't have that as a monthly thing. And then a couple of specialties, Knives Illustrated, Handgun Illustrated, little hands, so it always looked good, made the weapons look more menacing. And so I'm a professional hand model and a professional beer drinker. And all I wanted to do was go ride motorcycles. So go figure. But that's how crazy life at McMullen really was.
Yeah, it truly was an experience, and for me, it was a dream come true. I'm a kid in France. I love American style motorsports and flat track and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm in California living the dream and meeting all these people and going to the off-road series at Anaheim Stadium back then, the Mickey Thompson thing. It's incredible. And I get to meet at the Supercross my heroes of the time, Johnny O'Mara, Jeff Ward, all this stuff. It was a grand old time.
And then we were able to parlay that into careers in the power sports industry. Your girlfriend at the time actually worked at Dealer News.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Dealer News was until through Philippe, a copy of the magazine showed up, and it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. No, I met Claire at Street Runner magazine. She was the managing editor, and she would rewrite my copy, which I wrote in Pig Latin, with French words interspersed with some English. And so she made me look good. And yeah, after I left McMullen and Hot Rod, I found out that she worked at Dealer News. When I did my first indie show in '98, when I first introduced Beringer brakes to the U.S. market in '98.
See, and that's the other thing. Beringer, you're now Mr. Brake. You're now sponsoring flat track and road racing teams and bagger teams and all of this stuff. You're up to your eyeballs in the motorcycle market where you always belong.
You know what? I started with motorcycles. My neighbors, I was the youngest member of my local motorcycle club in France at 12. I had the Solex, with the engine on the front wheel. And because I've always had a passion for languages, I did well in English in school. So they put me in charge of the relations with the foreign motocross racers that came to our international motocross. So I was 13 years old and telling Brad Lackey where the showers were. and when Moto 1 was 2 to Håkan Karlsquist and Aki Mikola and Jim Pomeroy and all these guys. And so I was always a motorcycle guy, and I road raced my little 50cc bike until I graduated from high school. So it's been, I love everything motorsport. I love airplanes. I've been to the Reno Air Races. I love Baja, Dakar racing, Formula One, Le Mans, of course, because I was born there, endurance racing. So I love all kinds of motorsports. But motorcycles, yeah, because I'm hands-on with motorcycles. I can't build a car, but I can build a bike. So it's been a dream. And so that led me to meeting with Gilbert Beringer, who was looking for somebody to distribute their brakes on the U.S. market. And that's how they started in '98 at Indy.
So, Mr. Beringer had the most phenomenal mustache in the history of mustaches, and it will always stand out.
Well, I can't believe you remember that. That's very funny. Yeah, and he was 100% French. So at the booth, at the Paris Motorcycle Show or EICMA in Milan, he had a little van I built, and at lunchtime at 12 sharp, he would disappear. There would be nobody in the booth, and then they would go out there and pop a bottle of red wine and fromage and saucisson and all this stuff, and come back talking to people with cheese and wine breath. It was quite unbelievable. But he was a great engineer, great guy, created some real wonderful products. And then in '08, he branched out, sold the motorcycle division to a new company that still owns it today, and went off to do his airplane brakes because that was his passion. So now you have Beringer Aero, which Gilbert Beringer runs with his daughter, totally separate from us. And then now there's Beringer Motorcycle Brakes that belongs to a big corporation that's called Saint Jean Industries, and we only do motorcycle and some car stuff.
But you're making that transition. You were going to retire back to France, but like the mafia, you're a made man. You can't get out just yet.
I love this place too much. I mean, I'm impressed with the show here in Anaheim. I mean, we'll be back as an exhibitor next year at Orlando. And it's hard to get out because I love it so much. I love everybody. We're working on new distribution in the U.S. We streamline some processes. We have some new products coming up, some improvements to our current product line. So it's going to be exciting. Further down in 26. Right now, we're just rebuilding our distribution network in the U.S.
Well, Philippe, thank you for stopping by and the trip down memory lane.
And like this on TV, thanks for having me, Robin.